I want to welcome everyone. Again, I'm Anadea Judith, and I'm with Michael Wayne, and we've been doing this podcast, Voices for the Future, about people that are making positive change in the world and creating a positive future. This is our third year of doing this, and I am so thrilled to be kicking off 2022 with Amira Diamond, who I've known for, I guess we just figured out 16 years now since the beginning of your organization. So I'll do a formal introduction of her and then get the discussion started. So, with over 20 years of development and campaign experience, Amira Diamond is the co founder and co director of Women's Earth Alliance, where she designed innovative programs, campaign, and outreach strategies, including the World Weaver Initiative, a multimedia based education platform using storytelling, music, and culture to connect grassroots initiatives with a broad audience. Amira's work in women and development and experience as a community organizer spans from Kingston, Jamaica to Capitol Hill. She previously directed the West Coast region of Democracy Matters. She worked alongside Julia Butterfly Hill, the woman who lived in the tree to protest redwood logging, as Associate Director of Circle of Life and served on the Forbes Executive Women's Board. Amira is also an advisor for Paul Hawken's New York Times bestseller Regeneration, Ending the Climate Crisis in One Generation, which is the most hopeful book I have read in 10 years.
Yay.
So I'm so glad that you're working with Paul on that. We've been trying to get him as a speaker, but welcome, Amira. However, that formal bio doesn't really give it justice, what you and your partner Melinda, your partner and Wea do. It's just so amazing. And I am just really blessed to have you. And I want to share your inspiration with everyone here and hope to garner some support for your organization. So let's start out with the backstory,
Okay.
getting to know you and how you founded WEA. WEA is Women's Earth Alliance, everyone. And how the idea came to you, how you got started in it, what was your original intention, and why WEA exists.
Absolutely. Well, I'm just delighted to be here. It's such an honor to get to share like I said, the good news that's really rising from the ground up and some of the stories of my colleagues from around the world. I am based here in Sonoma County, Sebastopol. This is the unceded territory of the Pomo Indians, and just
That's California for people who don't
That's
know.
correct, in California, and really honored to be here on this land and sharing the work of Women's Earth Alliance, which was founded in 2006. Believe it or not, 16 years later, a very original meeting of Women's Earth Alliance took place in Mexico City. And it was 30 women from 26 countries who came together to look at how to build an alliance, a network, an organization that would support the rising leadership of women on the front lines of the climate emergency, on the front lines of navigating environmental degradation, on the front lines of ensuring that their families and communities have the most basic needs met: access to safe water, access to healthy food, access to clean energy. And Melinda Kramer, who is my co-founder and who really got the call for the original meeting of Women's Earth Alliance, often tells the story of working in around the world and just experiencing that everywhere she went, it was women who were stepping forward to say, what's going on in our community, and why is my family sick, and what can we do about this shortage of food, and what can we do about ensuring that we've got regenerative food agriculture happening in our communities. And yet the resources for women and for their work was just not there. So this original meeting was an inquiry about what could happen, what could emerge if we put some real intention and focus there. And from the very original meeting, the needs that came forward were the need for leadership development,
Mm.
need for hands-on skills and tools, the need for access to technical resources, for mentorship and guidance from others who have built out campaigns and built long-standing initiatives in their communities, um, alliances that could help women sustain their work over time, and access to funding. And what we know is that while it has been recognized that women's environmental leadership is central to reversing the climate crisis, women's environmental leadership only receives 0.7% of philanthropic dollars globally. Wow. And so that stark awareness that wasn't even there at the time, you can imagine that the gap in resources for women doing environmental justice work was huge. So from that very first convening, Women's Earth Alliance began, and those of us who carried the mission forward, based in Berkeley, California, is where the global team began to set up and invest in building out this capacity building model. And what we have today is a tried and true capacity building model that works with women who are just like those original 30 existing leaders in their communities. They are women with a track record of success who have already done organizing, who are the go-to leaders in their communities, and who have work that's well underway, but with an infusion of support can do so much more. And so our accelerator program is the hallmark of WIA's work at this time. And that accelerator program comes from the very blueprint of that first convening in 2006. Since that time, we've worked in 23 countries. We've trained over 7,000 women leaders, and those 7,000 leaders have gone on to reach more than 12 million more.
Wow. Yeah. So Amira, when you first converged and began, where did you begin with? Like, what was the first project, or where did you go?
Sure. Our one of our first initiatives was called the Global Women's Water Initiative, that was founded in 2008. We launched that at Dr. Wangari Maathai's training center, the Greenbelt Movement in Nairobi, Kenya. And that original program brought together 30 women leaders. We love the number 30, and that's been a sweet spot. Most of our cohorts have been about that size. Women came from throughout East Africa, and it was our Women in Water program helped equip community leaders with the skills and tools they needed to bring safe water to communities. And so that looked like learning how to build ferro-cement tanks, and how to build rainwater harvesting systems, and how to do water testing, how to use solar cook kits to purify water from at the household level. And so that very first gathering in 2008, the women came in teams of 2, and the teams of 2 consisted of a community leader and of someone who was at the helm of a nonprofit. Oops, my kids are popping in. Hang on one sec.
Just to mention, Amira's done all this while raising 2 children.
Yeah. So they're used to hearing me say, home office, scoot. So the women came in teams of 2, one being a community leader, one being at the helm of an NGO. And together their skill sets really allowed them to both administrate and build out, broader safe water programming, as well as be able to reach the community with the kinds of behavior change that happens when people start to integrate new technologies and new technical skills into their daily lives. So that program, which was formed with Gemma Boulos was at the helm of that program, and our colleague Jan from Crabtree, and several organizations came together to launch the Global Women's Water Initiative. And that's where the original blueprint for this capacity building program began.
Wow. And what are some of the other projects you've done since? There's so many on your website, and I've lost track of all the things you're doing.
I know, it's been many years. Well, the work in West Africa really deepened and continued for many years. We continued to run programming there. We moved and did the same exact work in Ghana, and did that work in West Africa as well. And and then we began several years ago to do a program in Indonesia. So we have our Indonesia Accelerator Program, which has since convened women from 28 different provinces in Indonesia, and women who are that program launched and has been more intersectional and focused not just on water, but focused on plastic pollution and focused on recycling and focused on bringing clean energy or solar programs. Many of the women are working on conservation efforts or working on tree growing efforts, and the decision to do that work intersectionally in Indonesia was a strategic one, because in Indonesia, there had never been a program like Women's Earth Alliance that was bringing women leaders together. And so the incredible value when you bring women together across sectors really strengthens the movement building that, and so that work in Indonesia has been happening for 4 years now and is deepening with each passing year. We also have a US Accelerator Program that we've been doing in partnership with Sierra Club. And that program is with women throughout the US and US territories. And hang on one sec.
You see what women have to deal with when they're doing all the life-changing, world-changing efforts that they're doing, and they sure get credit for it.
I know, exactly. And so in the US, this program was launched in partnership with Sierra Club. And this has just been an incredible groundswell of action that's been happening over the last 5 years. As I said, women leaders from throughout the US and US territories. And these are people like Beth Roach, who's in Virginia. She's a seed saver and has had the opportunity to build out her seed saving initiative, or Tasha Phonics, who lives in and works in St. Louis. She works in a food desert where she's been launching a regenerative farming program and helping her community access land and plant healthy food for their communities where they otherwise aren't able to access that for miles often. Women like Janae, who's one of the representatives, she's actually a Native Hawaiian representative who lives in the Kealakekua Bay region on the Big Island. And she's been advocating to bring more women's leadership into, to support rising women's leadership. Leaders like Camille Hadley, who lives in the Panhandle in Florida. And she's another woman who works in a region that's extremely climate impacted and has a program called Little Growers Inc. that is building out regenerative farms and helping communities access healthy food, helping children learn how to grow their own food. We have so many women from the US who also responded in earnest to the COVID crisis. And so when COVID hit, we actually pivoted our work programs to be exclusively online, which was a really successful transition for WIA. It was during a time when, fortunately, we already had built out a big portion of our accelerator programming into online modules, and we were able to simply pivot the whole program to be online. And so our work didn't skip a beat. And what we saw was that the women throughout our alliance globally were the first responders for, just like they are for the water shortages or for food shortages, they were the first responders for COVID as well. And so many of the challenges that COVID presents for communities are the very same challenges that we navigate when dealing with the climate crisis. And so we launched a COVID and climate program. And that allowed WIA leaders to really be able to provide their communities with the resources and tools that they needed to endure. And that work continues. We got some support from the L'Oreal Foundation to deepen that work, and it's continuing this year.
Wow. My jaw drops when I hear what you're doing. How do
Yeah.
you know where to land? Like if you do something in West Africa, here you are in Berkeley, California. How do you guys know where, how do you women know where to start?
Well, I would say that the strength of our relationships has really been the guiding light of Women's Earth Alliance. And part of our intention from the very founding was to build out an initiative that was decolonial in nature, that responded to the needs and the call of our colleagues on the ground, rather than being set up as a charity model that would just, shuttle solutions and shuttle potentially unnecessary resources into a community. And so what we have always done is follow the call of the original 30 women leaders who came to that very first convening. And so the call for us to launch in East Africa was there. And then when we pivoted to West Africa, it was a colleague who invited us to begin our work there. One of we as founding leaders, Arshinder Kaur, invited WIA to begin our work in India when we began there in 2008. And so it was our responding to the needs rising from the ground that has called us each and every time to the regions where we work. And I will also say that it's individual women leaders, but it's also the organizations of which they are a part. And so Women's Earth Alliance has prioritized partnership at the heart of all of our programming. And so we never go it alone. And the strength of our organizational partnerships and the responding to the needs of those has been what's helped us make our choices about where we'll work and with whom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so inspiring, Amira, just to hear you talk. And Rhonda put into the chat box something that I would think everybody listening is also thinking. She asked, first she said, this is awesome. Then she said, if you can see it, said, I'm a leadership and public presentation coach. I would love to work with you at WIA. So could you tell people, anyone listening or who will be watching this recording, if they want to get involved in whatever way, what they would do?
Sure. We have our website, women'searthalliance.org, has a lot of different ways for people to get involved. We have people who volunteer, do everything from volunteer in our office, which has now become virtual. And so there are lots of opportunities for volunteering. We have a really robust internship program. We have a house party and event series that has been the lifeblood of Women's Earth Alliance. So many of the people who've made WIA who we are today came to us because a friend decided to gather a circle of women or a circle of women and men to learn more about our work. So those convenings have started to shift to being online, and people will host gatherings for WIA online. We have research projects that we need done on a regular basis. And then in general, a lot of what we encourage people to do is to follow our work and then heed the inspiration of the women leaders from throughout our alliance to take action in their own communities. And so this season, we are launching in partnership with an organization based out of DC that was founded by Hillary Clinton. It's an organization called Vital Voices. We have a gender action training program that we will be bringing live in April of this year. And so people can stay tuned, because that program will be for everyday people who are looking to learn more about the intersection of gender and climate, and who want to get their hands in the dirt in their own communities to take action, but doing that alongside a group of others. So we're really excited to be bringing forward this new program that's going to allow people to take action and do it within the support of community.
That's amazing. I mean, you should be, have sainthood for what you're doing. What are some of the surprising things you've learned about women as you have been doing this work for 16 years with women all over the world?
Thanks, Anodea. I will say that this has been an affirmation of what I know women to be about, which is, collaboration and creativity and connection. And so much of what's been really heartening for all of us, I think, is the collaborative way that women work together, and the really there's so little ego in the space. There's really so many of us that are just here to get the job done, the job of caring for our earth, the job of making sure that our children are healthy and safe, the job of making sure that our communities are are moving in the right direction. The job of thinking about not just our own lives, but thinking, the wisdom of my indigenous colleagues, which is thinking 7 generations forward. And how can we, each and every time we make a choice, be thinking not just about today or not just about tomorrow, but 7 generations forward. And the humility of even thinking 7 generations forward means that you're far beyond your own life and your own little you and what you think you may or may not accomplish, but on to really considering the whole. And I think that I have just been so appreciative to see how little drama there is in our work, and how ready everyone is to share their solutions. One of the big functions of Women's Earth Alliance is to help shuttle solutions across regions and across borders. There's so many best practices and there's so much you can learn from, for example, in my very own life here, living in, Pomo territory, Sebastopol, California. I remember when the fires hit here, I guess it was 5 years ago now. Our neighbors in Napa had been through very serious fires in the years prior. And what we were able to learn from them to be able to respond quickly here in Sonoma County was so significant. And it was without those relationships and that pathway between what they had already learned and what we were facing in the moment, we would have lost so much time in being able to protect and take care of our community that was being hit in real time. And that's what I'm watching happen throughout Women's Earth Alliance, is leaders being able to pick up the phone and call each other about, how did you deal with the fires that you just navigated? How did you deal with the palm oil company that came through your community? How did you do an advocacy campaign that would stop the pesticide use in your community? How did you work for farm worker rights and how were you successful in that? And then the generosity of leaders taking the time to share with each other, this is what we did, this is how we did it. And not just even on a practical level of the nuts and bolts of the way the campaigns run, but how did you get through all of this? Because it's really challenging to be pushing against power, and it's scary and it takes a lot of energy. And so the amount of emotional support that's happening inside the Alliance, and the generosity of being willing to sit and listen to someone as they move through their tears, as they move through their despair, as they move through their, rage, and rightfully so, at so many of the injustices that are happening. So, but knowing that when we move through those feelings, we can find that next level of agency and inner resource and power to be able to go on, to be able to continue to work for justice. That kind of generosity and collaboration that happens inside Women's Earth Alliance. And, not just inside WEA, because WEA is part of a much bigger web of women and men who are working to protect our planet from the inside out. But it's that kind of generosity of spirit and collaborative nature that I have seen that's been the most heartening.
Wow. Yeah. That was a question I was going to ask you. You've answered it most of it. I want to ask it or reframe it or just have you say more. I was going to ask you, when you've gone into societies in countries all around the world, and perhaps in the US too, that are patriarchal in nature and tradition, what the level of resistance you've come up against and how you've worked around it. But I mean, you've come up against a lot of resistance, as you're implying.
Sure. Women's Earth Alliance's programming, is to empower women leaders, but I would absolutely say that we are in deep partnership with our male allies, and all of our programs make an effort to ensure that the women who are a part of them are supported by the men in their communities. If a woman is coming to a program and she's a part of an organization, there's very often men who work within that organization. And for us to be able to have their buy-in and have their championship of the women is really important. Inside of our technical trainings that have happened, whether we're building cement tanks or composting toilets, there have often been men who are coming, who are learning, who are part of the process, although they may not be the sole participant in the programs themselves. So I think that we really bring that collaborative spirit to the work that we're doing and encourage and support women to build alliances with the men that are in their lives who can support them as they take the next steps into their power. And I'm happy to say that I do feel that most of the women we work with, although the broader society may not be interested in their rising leadership, so many of them do have champions. And you know what's incredible? I have to say that in those late nights after you finish the big talk and everyone's learned all their things for the day, and then you sit around in a big circle and talk about your lives, what I've seen is that so many WIA leaders have incredible dads. And I'll hear story after story of the dad that championed the woman and said, you know, you can do this. This world is for you too. You belong as a leader, and really had that championship. So I feel like we're holding hands with men to transform this world. Now, you know, people who, you know, jumped into a male body didn't create the past any more than we did. And we're all facing the moment from here forward. So I definitely think that feminism and the work of women leaders is not women's work alone. And yeah,
It's really about forming partnership and having equal partnerships, you know, and bringing women
yeah,
up so that we can be in partnership with men,
yeah.
because we each carry a piece of the puzzle. Well, I know because I was speaking a couple months ago with somebody from your organization that Women's Earth Alliance is really scaling up to your next level right now. So what does some of that scaling look like? What's coming up that you're trying to move toward?
Well, I will say that you know, this past year was a landmark year for WIA. We trained, you know, 2,745 women leaders in 8 countries, and those leaders reached more than 3 million people.
And that's in 1 year.
And
Wow.
that was one
And you have
year.
2 kids. And Melinda has kids too.
Melinda, and also my our third co-director, Kahea Pacheco, is who has been part of Women's Earth Alliance for more than a decade and stepped in to be a co-director. I guess it'll be a year and a half ago. She also has 2 boys. So if you
Oh,
can
wow.
believe it, not a whole lot of women end up having daughters at WIA. We tell people before they start working with us.
Interesting.
But we are expanding our Women in Forest program significantly in the next few years. And that's because we know that this is the moment. And we, community leaders, are out there on the front lines, ready to protect our forests and to grow more trees. And I'm sure you know that at COP26 at the Climate Summit, more than 100 world leaders promised to end and reverse deforestation by 2030. And more than 30 of the world's biggest financial companies also promised to end investments in activities that are linked to deforestation. And our Women in Forest program is really riding this wave of momentum. And we have deep roots, building back on the legacy of grassroots women and indigenous women's leadership that's, you know, stretches back for generations. So, you know, for example, our women-led conservation project in Kakamega, Kenya, is critical because it's the last remaining tropical rainforest in all of Kenya.
Wow.
And years of deforestation and the growing climate emergency have really put the future of that forest and those who depend on it in the balance. And so in Kenya, WIA projects are training local women leaders to conduct forest monitoring and to educate about the role that the forest plays in climate resilience and food production and medicine. They're learning to plant native trees on their homesteads and harvest sustainable firewood, and launching microenterprises that build alternatives to logging and animal trapping. And it's really been successful. In 1 year, 6,000 native trees were planted, and 40 women have launched businesses that protect the forest.
Yeah.
And based on the success in Kenya, the government is designating 50 hectare parcels of native rainforest for us to restore and protect. And so we're really following this rising momentum and doubling down on our Women in Forest program and expanding that globally. We also just became a partner on Jane Goodall's new Trees for Jane initiative, which is a global reforestation and tree protection initiative. And so this Women in Forest program will be supported by that work. And so that's one area that WIA is really leaning in.
Wow, wow. And that's really addressing the most pressing issue we have, which is climate change. And what is your, well, I know you work with Paul Hawken on regeneration and that whole idea of when we regenerate the forests, they fix carbon, and we regenerate the seas and they fix carbon, and how all that works. But what are some of your favorite solutions for climate change?
I think that there are so many different actions that can be taken at the community level to reverse the climate change and to help quell the climate emergency. I am honestly going to say that my favorite solution to the climate emergency is called relationship.
Say more.
I really believe that the more that we connect in our communities, the more we open our hearts to our neighbors, the more that we build deep and meaningful connection, the more that we care about the world around us, the more that we have the energy and the momentum within to really enact change. And so I think for anyone to become a civically engaged, it's important to find the thing that lights them up. And I know Julia Butterfly Hill always used to say this. She would talk about, what's your tree? She would say, everyone asks me, what should I do? Or, should I climb a tree? Or, what should I do next? And she would say to them, well, what is your tree? And I honestly believe that each and every person has to ask themselves, what's the thing that I can do, that I can sustain over time? And so whether it's becoming involved in local advocacy campaigns, if you're someone who really likes to, deal with people and wants to be out there at decision-making tables and wants to organize and mobilize, an advocacy campaign might be the right strategy, whether it's, reducing plastic pollution, or whether it's ensuring that there is safe and healthy food in schools, which often ends up rippling back out into pushing for regenerative agriculture and for stopping dangerous pesticide use, and for tending to the earth in a way that regenerates the topsoil so that we can draw down more carbon and have a sustainable future. That that could be something that could sustain someone over time. Or whether you're someone who wants to get your hands in the dirt and actually get out there and physically plant trees, or actually get out there and physically pick up trash and help with beach cleanups, or help with land restoration. I think what's important is that people pick something that they really care about and that they can stick with, because this isn't it's not like a flash in the pan thing. This is a lifestyle, protecting our planet and integrating into our lives like action. And it's a long road, but it's just about getting on it and doing that small thing that you can do. So I would say that relationship to yourself and what lights you up, and to people who can help you, stay engaged and sustain that engagement, and a relationship to the earth that has you caring about it and feel called by it to tend it. That to me is the number one solution.
Yeah. That's it really is. I wouldn't want to say necessarily the magic formula, but relationship, collaboration, and it's interesting because that's what in the laws of evolution, what Darwin put forward is that humans or all species in their highest levels of evolution are meant to collaborate and not compete. And so you're really talking about the highest levels of human capability, and perhaps that's what has made we have become such a force for good, is that collaborative spirit that just can't be stopped.
Yeah, that values the quality of the moment, and how that leads to the next moment and builds the future that we ultimately want to see. We're most certainly impact driven, and yet at the same time, we know that it's not just what we do, it's how we do it. And the quality of presence and awareness and attention and care that you bring to something in the moment, means a lot to the end result, to the end game. And so much of that happens inside relationship and in the workplace and beyond.
Well, that's really the paradigm of the heart that really is the paradigm that's going to save us. Or, if we don't open the heart and work through relationship and collaboration and cooperation and relationship with the earth, I mean, that's our key. That's our way through. And it starts there and then is followed with a lot of hard work.
And
What have been some of your
that's,
biggest challenges?
well, I think this feeds nicely into to that, because I will say that, this Women's Earth Alliance has a focus on justice, and we always have. We're looking at gender justice, environmental justice, economic justice, climate justice. And what that means is that we have a rights-based approach to the work that we're doing, and that we're most interested in ensuring that there is justice at the core of decisions that are being made, and that we can restore justice in places where that is not happening. And the pain of injustice is severe, whether we're looking at gender-based violence and women who have endured violence against themselves, against their communities, whether we're looking at the violence that's happened to our earth. We're looking at the disparity in the access to resources, and people who, communities that have been systematically cut off from the access to whether it's the healthy food or the clean air or the clean energy that it takes to be well. Dealing with the impacts of the racial injustice in our society and around the world. These are not issues that can just be overlooked, pushed aside, and create a 10-point plan for the successful future. This is hearing people out, hearing what we all have to say about what we've been through, so that we can collaboratively design solutions for the future, is such an important part of this. And so I would say that one of the challenges is really being able to being able to balance the reparations that need to happen, along with the action that has to happen. And I would say that, as someone who has helped bottom line raising money for Women's Earth Alliance, through the years, it hasn't always been the empowerment of women that has been the most interesting thing for our funders. Maybe people have been interested in how many people are accessing safe water, how many trees have you planted, how many acres have been protected, but not necessarily, how many powerful healing conversations did you have this year? Yeah. And so we've had to really learn how to balance the way that we talk about our impact, the way that we create impact, and not do that at the expense of the heart and the real connection that it takes to create healing that's going to sustain these solutions. And I'm gratified because movements for restorative justice and the awareness about the intersectional nature of the work that we do has increased so much in the last 7 years, and in the last 3 years, and in the last year, that I really feel hopeful that the funding community and the public in general is starting to understand the complexity and the nuanced nature of doing this work in a way that's actually giving us a little more space to have that humanity inside of everything that we do, and to not just have the stories of healing be the things that we tell on the side, but actually being able to center the voices of and the stories of healing that happen within Women's Earth Alliance as something that's has value to the broader society and has value to the philanthropic community. But it's really been uphill. It's been uphill to be able to value that work and make time, ensure that we're able to make time for it. And we've been dedicated, so I can say we actually haven't compromised on that front, but we might be bigger than we are now if we had. And so it's been constantly riding that edge for us. And I'm proud of the way that we've made our choices, but that's been a real challenge.
It's why I donate to you. It's why out of all the organizations I give to, WIA gets the biggest chunk because of your values and the way you operate and the way you walk your talk.
Thank you, Anna Dea.
Yeah.
And honestly, when it comes to relationship, that has also been the way that we've grown the community of support for WIA. And so it is people like you who I have a beautiful, long-standing relationship with, and I feel like you're really stand behind what we're doing. And so for us, it's always been really important that we don't just have funders and people who participate in our programs. We have a global alliance, and the global alliance is women who are on the front lines of our environmental challenges. It's champions who are in their workplaces every day talking about WIA and bringing up, making sure that other employees hear about us and give their employee a gift. And it's community organizers who maybe they work at a corporation, or maybe they work at a small business. But they're wanting to implement some of the solutions that WIA leaders are implementing. And so we see ourselves very much as standing in a circle, and we're all bringing what we have to bring to the table to make this work rise.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Mira, you said a word that I'd like to ask you to say some more on. You said the word reparations, and people hear the word. So what were you using it in the context of?
Basically the injustices of the past have made it such that the majority of our world's population is not accessing the benefits that they deserve. And our work is about ensuring that there's healing and that those resources are redistributed, and that not only are they redistributed, but the people who are making the decisions are those who've been most impacted by those injustices. And I think that's one of the most important points, is that women are hit hardest by the climate crisis, and women are hit hardest by environmental degradation. They're everything from their women's breast milk holding toxicity, to women's bodies being violenced in communities where fracking or extractive industry is happening. Where the earth is being hurt, so too are women's bodies, often bearing the greatest burden. And women are also best positioned to drive solutions. So being centered in the choices that are being made about how to redistribute our world's resources, about how to set up laws and policies that are going to benefit our communities today and into the future, has to center the voices of women. And in particular, it has to center the voices of indigenous women and women of color who have bore the greatest burden to date. And so for us, reparations is about dedicating our organization and our work to ensuring that these voices rise and are centered every step of the way. And that has meant quite a lot that I don't often do interviews. Quite often I pass the baton, and one of my colleagues will do interviews and speak, because, quite frankly, there's been a lot of listening to white women's voices. And I'm honored to be here today. And I also acknowledge that most often it makes the most sense for me to ensure that someone else's voice is being heard.
Yeah, you were so incredibly egoless in all of what you do. It's really commendable. Let's take a little bit of questions from people listening. If you want to type it into the chat box and you have any questions for Amira, we have to wrap it up just around pretty close to the hour. So now is the time to ask any questions that you want. And in the meantime, maybe you can talk about how people can create more connection in their own communities.
Sure. Well, I think that starting where you are is the easiest way forward. If you're a mom or a dad, what's happening at school. If you're involved in your church, what's happening in your church. If you're someone who plays sports, what's happening at the park where you run on the fields there every day. If you're a hiker or someone who's a nature enthusiast and you have trails that you appreciate being on, who's tending those trails? Whose watch is ensuring that ecosystem is alive? Just starting to notice. In our S Accelerator Program, one of the first modules, women look at their watershed and they figure out what's the name of their watershed, look at a map of their watershed. Where is all the water that is the source of my life coming from? And I feel like starting to really have a sense of place. Whose land are you on? Whose territory do you live on? And how is the Native community in where you're from, on whose land you stand? How are they doing? Are there needs with that community that you could help meet? I think it makes the most sense to start where you are and do a round of observing, just learn. Okay, so that's who takes care of my park, or this is, and then start to look and build what could I do to be involved? What's needed? How can I be of service? Who's been here for a long time, who's already done a bunch of thinking? Because chances are there are little community groups everywhere who have thought about some of what needs to happen, but it's incredible. You would think that you stop and you think somebody else must be handling that, and they must already be being taken care of, but oftentimes it's not, and they need you. And so how can you show up with curiosity and be in service?
Yeah.
We do have a question.
Yeah, we have a question in the Q&A box from Grace. Denise, actually, it's a couple questions, so I'll just read everything here. Grace writes, can you speak more about which factors support positive behavior change on the local level? And what are some important lessons you've learned about what makes change possible in the behavior of powerful vested interests? Do you feel that vision and negotiation can make a significant difference? I can repeat all three of those and break it down one by one if that's easier.
Can you just read the last one about, do you feel vision?
Do you feel that vision and negotiation can make a significant difference?
Vision and negotiation. Yeah. And the very first question, the very first part of that was?
Which factors support positive behavior change on the local level? I think you've talked about that as relationship.
Yeah. 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 And I think, again, power with instead of power over is the key. it's not being adversarial and arguing. It just seldom brings solutions to the next level. And so I think anywhere you look, whether it's in Nigeria, where Olanike Olugboji has been working for many years to help women start using clean cook stoves, you'd be amazed what a big deal it is to shift from using wood stove to using a clean cook stove, and the amount of sensitization that has to happen in a community, the amount of trust that a woman has to have in the person who's telling her that this new cook stove is going to be just as good as the food that they've been cooking that way for generations. And all of a sudden you're going to tell me there's a new thing I should use. Well, the main thing that has someone make a change like that is because they trust the person who's bringing them the new solution. And they're being given the information that they need to be able to make a choice for themselves. And so I think community organizing moves at the speed of trust. And, it's better to build a base and build a community of trust and then move into trying to actually leverage change than to just jump out without really power mapping the community and understanding who the different players are and what their different needs are, and learning how to respect that even though you may not agree completely with what someone else wants or needs, they're a person too, coming from their own perspective, and being able to see the humanity in that and really understand that is a really important part of being able to leverage change. So I think that for sure, being visionary and being able to hold out an opportunity or a possibility that somebody may not have seen is a really important way to get a community to start to move forward. We have to have our visionaries and the people who show us what could happen instead of what you think always does happen or what inevitably will happen. And then negotiating to implement that vision in a very systematic way with a phased approach that has very measured successes all along the path is important. Because if you just have a big visionary goal and until you get there, you're not done, then people can get exhausted really fast, because it's important to be able to feel like you're succeeding each and every step of the way. So setting those benchmarks for success and celebrating each time you arrive at a benchmark of success is really important. Even sometimes just setting a goal that you can achieve so you can have an achievement can be an important strategy for community organizers. It's because rest assured, it'll take a while to implement anything. And so that measured strategic approach to achieving a vision is really important.
Oh, that's beautiful. Trent just typed in, I've mentioned at times it's too late to fix and repair this planet, but if men can hold space, women will rebirth it. Wea is a good example. Thank you. And to that, as we're wrapping up here on Voices for the Future, what do you see for the future of this planet? I mean, we read the news and we look at the climate issues and the environmental issues, and people go, oh my God, we're doomed. And you obviously don't have that attitude. You are making changes. What do you think is going to happen in the future?
I think that the most important things right now are seeds and songs and stories. And I think that acoustic instruments and singing and walking and using our bodies and eating healthy food. I'm interested in uplifting and dancing. That's right, Denise. I'm interested in uplifting traditional knowledge, indigenous life ways, a relationship to the earth that has us really understanding that we are one, that we are connected. And so when Women's Earth Alliance is choosing projects, for example, we will choose a project where we know that the work is going to ensure that some piece of traditional knowledge will sustain into the future, like in Karnataka, India, where we have had our Seeds of Resilience program working with Sunita Rao and a group of women forest gardeners. The work has cataloged the knowledge of grandmothers who have been saving seeds for generations, who have an understanding of which strains of seeds are flood resistant and which are drought resistant, and have an understanding of how to plant based on the movement of the heavens and based on the seasons and the way that the rains are falling, and when to fertilize and when to plant and sow based on the rhythms of nature. And this knowledge is literally been passed down through generations and would otherwise be lost if we didn't, categorize that, ensure that these grandmothers are listened to, that their stories are told, that the information that they hold, valuing it, that it's important. And so I think that wherever in our own lives and in our communities, there are people holding wisdom and knowledge that relates to our earth, that relates to our histories, that relates to our oral traditions. If we can keep all those things alive, certainly there will be destruction ahead. We're not going to get through the eye of the needle with anything on our back this time.
Mm-hmm.
But if we've got in our hearts, these things that can't be taken away from us, I believe that we will have the seeds that we need to really continue to plant and sow a beautiful future for future generations, one where we live in our bodies, in harmony with nature, in connection with one another, navigating the human experience with all of those gifts.
Beautiful. This is why I love you so much and why I support you.
Thank you.
You go to preserve the things that really matter. You're at the heart of it. Yeah, you really understand it. I really can't say enough for my respect for Women's Earth Alliance over the years. How can people support you? How can people support this organization that is doing so much good in the world and so much toward our future?
Well, our website, women'searthalliance.org, has a ton of information and stories. I would say follow us on Instagram. If you're on Instagram, we've got a great feed that's telling tons of stories, and we're always looking to grow our presence on social media. There are ways to access volunteering through our website. And then I would say, donate. It's like, I know that people want to get involved and they want to physically do something. And I encourage everyone to do that. But I also know how busy our lives are. And there's nothing wrong with just making a financial donation, because if you work full time and you have some extra resources that you could share, that we can put to good use. That's what we're here doing each and every day. And honestly, I watch us turn women away from WIA programs every year. And it's the saddest thing that happens in my years, that I would ever have to make a choice between one well-intentioned, effective leader and another. It's each and every person who has the courage and has the capacity and has the drive to get up and take care of their community from the inside out should have exactly what they need to be able to do their work and feel supported and feel like they can, thrive at that. And so I really invite people to make a financial contribution to Women's Earth Alliance, or to any group who you feel is making the kind of change you want to see happen in the world, because those dollars really go a long way.
You can't operate without cash. You've got operating expenses, you've got your offices, your plane tickets, your all the things. So yeah, nothing like cold hard cash to keep something going.
Yeah.
Michael, do you have any other questions?
Oh, well, talking about CAT, I was just curious, in terms of donors, you get some philanthropic or corporate donors also?
Oh, yes. We have so many incredible businesses who support Women's Earth Alliance. And, last year we saw an increase of corporate partners like we've never seen before. And I think it's because businesses understand that they need to provide a working environment for people that has meaning. And the everyday people who go to work have said to the businesses they work with, we will not be here unless there can be a layer of real meaning to the work that we're doing. And so that's another thing that people can do. It's workplaces are responding so positively to bringing that kind of action to their mission. And, frankly, consumers are at the influential point where they would rather buy something from a company that has a social and environmental impact than they would from a company who doesn't. And so I think we're watching the culture of corporate America really change right now, and for the better in that way. And so, we welcome new corporate partners, and I also encourage people to engage their workplaces around being part of the change, because so much happens there, so much.
Grace asked for a Facebook link, says I would love to share and also donate.
Okay, great. To our Facebook. Oh, thanks, Michael.
Oh, so the Facebook, I could put that in there. The Facebook link would just be Women's Earth Alliance, or
I think so. I will put our donate page in.
Grace, you can always go to the website. I mean, the website for Women's Earth Alliance will steer you in any place. And if you want to share it with people, just share that link.
Thank you so much.
Take them to the website.
Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amira, thank you so much. It's just, I actually was not aware of Women's Earth Alliance until Anna Day told me you were going to be with us a few weeks ago, and I'm really just inspired.
Oh, thank you very much. I really
Yeah.
appreciate the chance to share this work and, just extend that spirit of us all being in it together. My boys have asked me so many times, why is it all women, women, women? You just Women's Earth Alliance, you just care about women. And I didn't want to tell my kids too much about the injustice in the world until I felt like they could really understand it a little better. And they had many months ago, I said to my son, I said, well, sweetie, there's something I want to tell you. And I said, do you know that there has never been a woman president of the United States? And he looked at me, he said, you're lying, Mom. And I said, I wish I was lying, but that is why we are Women's Earth Alliance, because right now, while we're restoring the balance of power, it's really important to call that out, because it just hasn't happened so far. But, one day, hopefully we won't exist.
That's right. That's right.
And I've pointed out to people that the word history is his story, so perhaps we should call it her story. They can have a better perspective on things.
And ultimately, we're moving into a place where the fluidity of gender and the need to really have to focus on gender roles, I'm sure will be, less and less. If we're lucky, it will be more about the expression that people have for themselves and who they consider themselves to be, and less about the labels that we have for ourselves. But right now, we're working with what we've got and making a difference every day.
You can also tell them that out of 193 countries, only 22 of them have women presidents.
Okay.
Oh.
So that's not just the U.S. and it's 244 years, and only three countries out of all those have reached 50% representation in their women cabinets.
Oh,
only
wow.
three out of 193. So it's not just the U.S., it's a long way to go everywhere, and you are doing that work, and you are forwarding the cause of women, and you are forwarding the cause of the earth and saving our future, and I can't be more grateful for the time you took. I know how busy you are, how hard you work, and I just hope that this brings some support for WIA, and I will continue to do everything I can to support you.
Thank you so much, Hannah Day. It's really been lovely spending the time with you as well, Michael.
Yeah.
And yeah, thanks everybody who joined us today. I look forward to staying connected.
Thanks to your boys for allowing you to be with us.
That's right. That's right.
I shut them down a couple times, but I'll go find them.
Give my love to Melinda and everybody at WIA.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah Day. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.